So hello, Antje. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start by asking you, why did you become an interpreter?
Hi, Joe, first of all, as well. Why did I become an interpreter? It was probably a bit like a story that many colleagues can relate to. I got there via a detour. I wanted to become a nurse like my mom, like all little children tend to want to become nurses or teachers. And throughout my time in school, my mom said that my school performance was such that if I wanted to do medicine, I should study it instead of just becoming a nurse. And I said, okay, Mom. And then we had in East Germany, which is where I grew up, we had the system that in year 5 in school, you started Russian. And then in year 7, you had English or French afterwards. Theoretically, you were supposed to be able to choose. But in my case, I would have been able to choose, but I would have had to change classes in the same school. And because I had already changed school 3 times before then, I didn't really want to do that. So my parents and the school arranged a way that I could start English in adult evening classes with the proviso that my school performance wouldn't drop. And so I learned Russian in year 5, English in year 6, and French from year 7. And then at some point, my mom took me aside and said, Antje, you really seem to have problems with getting up early, and you're grumpy when you're tired, and, days on call on the ward as a junior doctor, I'm not sure that's really your thing, but you seem to be doing really well with those languages. So I said, okay, Mom. And then we looked for something that one could do in East Germany at the time that was either becoming a language teacher or studying linguistics. So I studied linguistics. And then, and this is another story that goes even further back. In my 3rd year at university, we started having introduction to simultaneous interpreting. And we started with a technique called shadowing now. So where you just repeat something that somebody is saying, but in your own language with a delay of so and so many seconds or so and so many words. And it reminded me of a game that I was playing when I was still in kindergarten. Sort of age 4 or 5, when my mom told me to sit still on that chair in the kitchen and not get in her way, I was shadowing the news speaker on the radio just to entertain myself. So I thought, at that point, yes, this is meant to be.
Your future. Wow. It's a hell of a story to tell. Yeah. Well, very, very interesting.
Yeah, but so how did you end up at Interprefy and in the function that you're doing? Product development sounds very intriguing as well.
It is. It definitely is. I have a background of working in different industries, and mainly when I was back in Lisbon. I have done a bit of finance, a bit of public institutions, also telecommunications. I've moved into Switzerland in 2008. I had casual meeting with Andre and Adman from Interprefy, where basically they have explained to me the solution which they have been building, and I found it very, very, very interesting. And then basically I started expanding the development team. Basically, here we are after almost 3 years. When we talk about Interprefy, so what do you like about working on Interprefy?
First of all, what I liked right from the beginning, even including the first communication when making contact with Interprefy, is how particular they were about the equipment one uses. So the very strict standards I have myself, everything that I've learned about what sort of performance CPU you need for maintaining a stable session of interpreting on remote, I've learned from Interprefy. So that is, I like that approach, maybe because I'm German and I'm very, specific and precise and want everything in the right place. Also, then during the sessions or at the beginning of the sessions, the technical support again, they're the first ones that greet you, set you up. And I think that's a very good thing. Then the Interprefy interpreter interface itself is very clean, very neat. It's a joy just to look at. So I think the color scheme and the way everything is arranged, that's, at least to me, that looks tidy and that relaxes me already. I like that it has all the necessary features that we need and some just for comfort as well, like the slider to adjust the volume coming from the different incoming channels, like listening to the floor and listening to our booth partner at the same time at the ratio that we like. I know most other RSI platforms have that as well, but not all of them. And this is a particularly elegant and well-working part of the platform. So when you continue to develop the platform itself or things around the platform, how do you go about it? How do you choose what you're going to work on next? And how do you select what is going to make it and what not?
Well, in a very, very, let's say, short sentence, well, we listen to our client. We don't build it to be, let's say, just the latest and greatest, but to be something that people working every day feel that it's solid and that it has a clean user interface, and the idea of innovating it and changing it, it's definitely something that we pursue. But again, we also has, let's say, a goal that again, the stability, the security points that a product should have, that these are for us our top priority.
How do you take into account the interpreter sides, like what the interpreters themselves need in order to do the best job possible? So how is your team composed? Do you have someone who is an interpreter in there who tells you what's what?
From all of the meetings that we support, this interaction, it's also coming to the development team. When do we have feedback, when we have proposals, when we have requests, it's all flowing into the development team. We also run trainings on the platform. There is also a component of feedback coming from the interpreters back to the development team in terms of improvements that should be considered. So that is the, let's say, basically the main flows of feedback from the interpreter community into the product development. You talked about the simplicity of the user interface, and which ones would you, let's say, pick as the most ones you like, and which ones you'll say I can perform my activities without?
I wouldn't say that there's anything particularly that I would get rid of, because everything is there for a reason. The ones that I like particularly about the platform is, like I said, the audio adjustment, the mixing of the incoming channels. I like the handover feature as well, because there is the handover feature is different, although it's basically the same process that's happening, but it's done in different ways on different platforms. And while all of them have their points and their logic behind them, I find this one the easiest, where you alert your partner that you want to hand over now. Your partner then says, okay, I'm ready now. And then the person who's active, the active interpreter, just switches their microphone off and the other person takes over. That's really in a context where you don't see each other. I think that is the easiest and most straightforward way of dealing with it. So that's very good. Then there's another thing that I like very much, seeing, as you mentioned, training programs that you do. I have been given permission to talk about this, and this is one of the things that I like very much, even though it's not directly just the platform itself or the interface itself. That is the recertification training or certification training that is being or has been developed, and that I was allowed to beta test among lots of other colleagues as well. Because initially I said that I liked the focus on the technical side, and that certain criteria are fulfilled in order to guarantee that, at least in terms of the hardware and the connections, everything is rock solid, or as solid as it can be. The downside of that was that at some stage, some interpreters were not quite sure anymore whether they're still certified or whether they're not. I, for example, lost an assignment where I had a contract already with an agency that is partnering with Interprefy. They'd given me a contract, I'd agreed to it, I'd sent it back, and then I was told that I was a few days over the 3 months at the time that it was, so I needed a refresher course, and they wanted me to do the refresher on the Friday when the job was on the Monday. This was on Wednesday. I was still on holidays, and I'd already cut short my holidays to be home on Monday. But there was no way that I could cut it even shorter and be back just for the refresher training on Friday. So the job got cancelled without any, cancellation fees or anything else, just on that technical detail, which I hadn't been aware of in that sense. And I heard from other colleagues as well that they found that certain of their dates that were on Interprefy were disputed or were not recognized because they hadn't been logged appropriately. And that put some interpreters into difficult situations vis-a-vis the agencies who said, well, why do you agree to work for us if you're not even certified to work on that platform? So now this new training, I think, is an exemplary way of how to deal with it. You can do it at your own time. It's not a walk in the park, so you do have to pay attention and go through all the details. You have your test at the end. You have included also a check of your internet connection and of your CPU, of the equipment that you're going to use for interpreting assignments. And it's not being done in an invasive way via team viewers. So nobody from Interprefy has access to your equipment at that time. It is done through third party, like the CPU test and the broadband speed test is all done through websites or through platforms that people can use themselves on the internet quite freely. And then you have your certificate, which means, or you are logged as having passed. And even if your clients, because at the end of the day, it's the clients who decide what platform they work on and the interpreters go there. So I cannot say, well, dear client, would you put me on Interprefy, please, because I'm running out of time and I need to have a job on them so I can keep working on that platform. We can't do that. So this course is an excellent solution. And yeah, I was very happy with the concept, and I'm very grateful that I was allowed to test it as well.
I'm very happy to hear that. Just coming back to a previous point that you said in terms of things that exist in the Interprefy platform, which is a topic that we have been discussing internally and that we have planned to develop, although in a way that it's also fulfilling, let's say, the standards for simultaneous delivery platforms, interpretation delivery platforms, which is the possibility to have video between interpreters. So this has been considered. This has been considered in the standards, which Interprefy is also participating, and basically we are also developing it. Okay. Do you find that you would be, let's say, in the future activating this option?
I'm pretty sure that I will be activating this, and I very much look forward to having that introduced. I'm not one of the interpreters who has had colleagues who were necessarily very keen on setting up WhatsApp video calls during a job in order to have that visual input, but I would be very happy to have visual contact with the booth partner. It would make it easier. Also, typing is one thing, but quickly scrolling a note and showing it into the camera with numbers, names, whatever the booth partner may be having trouble with for various reasons, that would be very helpful. It's just more to us who are not digital natives, it is still more natural to quickly make a note and show it. Yeah, so I would very much like that. Do you plan on introducing any sort of AI assistance for interpreters, like transcription of names that come up that are specific for that client, which may be a client ideally who regularly works or regularly uses Interprefy as its interpreting platform?
So indeed, we are working exactly on what you mentioned, the creation of these glossaries and basically words or even sentences to support the interpreters. We are planning on having two main ways that this content will be basically consumed. Okay, one is prior to the meeting. We build this documentation, this information based on documents, presentations, videos from the client or from the industry. And so once we process this data using the latest AI technologies, we extract the terminology of this specific client and some not so common words or even numbers. So what we intend to do is with this documentation is before the meeting that the interpreter has access to this information, and the second way that this information will be consumed is then during the meeting, that, as you mentioned, in terms of names, acronyms, numbers, that this information, that interpreter while interpreting has access to a way to display this for the interpreters.
And would interpreters then also be able to do additional modules to the certification course, or will it be included in the certification course so that interpreters update their knowledge about the platform as they go along?
Yes, entirely. And I believe that again, one of the main reasons for the certificate, for us to basically request interpreters to recertify often is definitely because of these changes, these improvements on the platform. And this we are already talking about when the solution is basically made available. Until then, obviously, we will run a cycle of small test groups, right? That they will evaluate this solution until basically this solution is put in the market.
That sounds hugely interesting, and I already envy the people, the lucky people who will be on that team. That should be much fun, yeah. And it's very good to do this, and I like the fact that you pick up on things that come from the interpreting community, but that also come from outside the interpreting community, but directly impact the way they work. I was just yesterday and the 2 days before that at the TERP Summit, and certainly we were talking a lot about ways that AI is going to change and is already changing the way we work. So, and to develop these all of these products and come up with all of these ideas, who are the people in your team? Where do they come from? What do they bring into the product development?
We have people in 4 different continents, okay, also with different backgrounds. Some of them with experience on video, some of them experience even on television, okay. We have a colleague that worked in broadcasting for BBC. We have over 50 persons, which again they bring different ideas, different points of view, and basically we combine all of these points of view, and that's the interesting part of it, and then building a product that basically suits the needs of as much the wider audience as possible, and we keep expanding. Okay, so this is, let's say, basically we think that this is a journey, and that we are still far from the destination. Okay.
I'm sure of it. Yeah, it seems to be a very exciting time at the moment where you really cannot tell where we are going to be this time next year.
If you would be sharing with us something that we would not know about your job, your activity, what would that be?
I have maybe 2 messages about this, or 2 things, 2 ways of answering that. And one is not so much directed at you personally, but something that is very dear to my heart and that I would like to get rid of, but that you know already and mentioned yourself, which is that interpreters are highly trained at doing several things at the same time: hearing, deconstructing, understanding, putting back together, and delivering more or less at the same time, although not at the same phase either. So there are slight delays in that process. So interpreters are not walking dictionaries, as many clients seem to expect or think. We are experts at the interpreting itself, at the process, how it works, and we have all the tools for that. But every language. I had this experience last weekend. We were staying at my brother-in-law's, who is an ophthalmologist. His wife is a phlebotomist, and I talked to them a little bit about my work for this first time, because my French is now getting good enough to hold a proper conversation. And they both of them said, but how do you do that? Because we have a very, very specific jargon, and it reminded me of something that I actually learned at university. It is true. We are good at the languages that we speak, the working languages, but each language has lots of sub-languages, little jargons. Nobody in any country knows all of them, or nobody native of any language knows all of those jargons of their native language, let alone those that they have studied and have as a second, third, or fourth, or whatever language. So it is really important for interpreters to have material to prepare as well. It is not cheating. It is like cramming for exams. Let's look at it that way. It's not cheating at all. It's like cramming for exams. And that's literally what we do. We sit, we pore over the documents, we write down lists of documentation, we research what something means, what it is all about, and then we find the corresponding words in the target language. So we cannot do this without the material that we have. Another thing that people might not know is that I have found at least that interpreters have very strong and sometimes the most bizarre hobbies on the side that they also are nearly really super experts in. Like I have one colleague who's a karate teacher. She's a black belt, has been for a long time. I have colleagues who are yoga instructors, which kind of complements interpreting in a way, because we're always tense and super focused, and you have to learn how to chill and relax. I personally am a very serious photographer. I'm having some photos in a gallery in Paris at the moment. I'm very happy about that. And I design my own knitwear now and knit it myself. So we all of us still have lots of other things that we could be doing for a living, nearly, or are nearly as good. Because again, as interpreters, we are always nearly good enough. We're never quite good enough. That is why we're just interpreting about it and not doing it ourselves.
It's a passion. It's a passion. Passions are very, very interesting. Very interesting.
So how about you? What is it about product developers that we don't know?
Well, speaking a bit about myself is we spend most of our time talking to machines. We go back in terms of the social communication and the social interaction with other people. So I believe that let's say myself and most of our my colleagues try to, in a way, to get back this time spent with machines and retrieve this social interaction. We also feel that technology, we need to keep up with the technology. We usually work on a product using one technology, but this product and using this technology becomes, let's say, obsolete or becomes outdated very quickly.
Do you sometimes develop products just for yourself, just for fun?
Yes, that's
okay.
That is true. I not very often, but I do. The last one, actually, just out of curiosity, that I built is an application for my phone, because I have an e-bike, and the e-bike has a controller, and just to see some data on on the engine of my e-bike. Then I developed an application for my phone for this.
Bravo.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I am going to break the customary tradition of the Interprefiers, and I'm going to participate at the end a little bit, if you allow me. And just thank you for this very interesting discussion, which, even though I was not actively participating, I was thoroughly taking notes and enjoying your conversation. And I wanted to share something, if I may, when Joao asked Antje, what do others not know about her job? And I was surprised you didn't mention this. So I'm just going to go out there and say it, and say if let me know if it's true for yourself. I am a trained interpreter, and I started interpreting with between Spanish, English, and German. Those of you who don't know, and this is my point for this question, for this answer, is that German goes the other way around. So you have the verb at the end, and all it has a different structure, especially from Spanish. And you need to employ additional techniques that we didn't use for English and Spanish interpreting, or not that much. And I remember sweating in the booth whenever I had to interpret into German, because you have to wait quite a lot, anticipate. And this is where quite important what Antje said. You have to know the subject, because then it even helps in these situations. It helps you at least anticipate and try to make sense of the sentence, even if you don't have it in full. And I think some people don't know this, that languages have very, very different structures. And because of that, interpreters have to develop almost superhumane skills in order to be able to transfer that into another language, when the structure, just as simple as subject, object, verb, is so different. So has that been the case for you as well, Antje?
Very true, absolutely. But it's probably not been on my radar as something that I would have mentioned now, because I am German, so I didn't have to learn it. I grew up with it. But yes, absolutely. Going from German into English sometimes is a bit tricky, especially when you have composite tenses. So the main verb is somewhere hidden at the end of the sentence, and you've got like 3 subclauses before then. So that is why, again, especially written contributions that are being read out, please give them to your interpreters, unless you want to,
misinformation.
Yes, and especially it doesn't seem to make any sense for people to put that much effort into writing a speech and then to let the other language versions just improvise, make it off the cuff when the speaker
That's actually
themselves have put so much effort into it.
Absolutely. And lastly, are you wearing one of your creations?
I am, yes.
I could not help myself.
This is not my design. This is a Japanese designer who did this. I just knitted it, but yeah, I'm progressing now. Now I'm designing my own as well. I confess to having even done it in the booth.
You're one of those then, because people always say,
yes,
people always talk about interpreters that knit in the booth. So you are the person they're referring to, right? I know now. So thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview, the first of 2022, first of many. And I wish you have a wonderful rest of the day. And it was a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Antje. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Likewise, Joao. Thanks very much for your time.